Sci-fi, fantasy, thriller, romance, and all the genres in between, there are a lot to choose from. But what does that mean for us writers? Sticking with one genre can help solidify your brand in a reader's mind. But what if you want to stretch your wings and fly into something new? We have Jeffrey H. Haskell on today to discuss writing in a new genre. So get your questions ready because we've got Jeff here for an hour and it's on like Donkey Kong. Hey, Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hey,
Yeah.
Lauren. So great to be back. Thank you for having me. Hopefully, Kalene will get to join us at some point.
She is working on her computer right now, and I know she'll be here as soon as she can. We love her, and we can't wait to get her back on the show. And also, welcome to everyone else who's been here. Rick's been here first, so he gets the golf clap of the day. Yeah, hi, Rick. And also, we've got Corey Gillum, and we've got, well, Walt Robillard, and some other people. Kit, hi, Kit. Everyone's here. And also, I saw Rebecca a little bit earlier and the baby. How are you guys doing in Jeffrey Haskell land?
Oh, what? We're doing good. The baby's a baby. We're enjoying it. 3 months old so far. And he's just wonderful. And we love every second of it, no matter how tired we are or stressed out or et cetera, et cetera. It was interesting running a major launch while having a baby. There's a lot of Becky is just a saint, a lot of patience on her part, and a lot of her willingness to let me work and deal with the baby and stuff like that. So obviously, I had the most amazing wife of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways, often and early.
And loud and proud.
I don't know how to be anything else but loud. Ask Walt Robillard about that. He knows all about being loud.
He will be on in 2 weeks' time. He is our next guest. He's going to talk about his new role with Galaxy's Edge imprint, Wargate. He is now the editor-in-chief there, and he's been learning a few things along the way. So, yeah, we're going to hear all about that and what coffee he's been drinking. I'm drinking Banana Foster with heavy whipping cream inside, and it is absolutely delicious.
There are very few things that heavy whipping cream doesn't make better.
That is true. That is very true. I made some Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets last night, and heavy whipping cream went into them. And it was good. So we're going to be talking about your new launch. For those in the audience who haven't met you yet, what do you normally write, and what are you getting into, and how's that experience been jumping into a new genre?
Oh, awesome. Okay, so for everybody who doesn't know me, which, it's probably many people, I'm Jeffrey H. Haskell. Hi, Kalene.
Hello.
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of my writing career, because if you really want to know about me, you can, I've been on 100 podcasts, so I've talked about it a lot. But I started writing back in 2016 or 15, seriously. Got published by Kindle Press in 2016. I won the Kindle Scout competition back when they still had it.
Wow.
Wrote under a pen name for a couple of novels until I felt like I was better. Decided I did not want to write urban fantasy, and so I used my own name to write superheroes. My lovely wife Rebecca does all my covers, and you can look at her cover collection at vividcovers.com.
She's amazing.
Yep.
She's done a bunch of covers that Athon's bought. She did Prigg's Leviathan Battleship Leviathan series and a whole bunch of others. So she's really, really good. She really knocked the covers for Against All Odds and the rest of the books in the series out of the park. One of the things I really wanted people to know was how special the ship was, and you can tell just by looking at it, it's a special ship. It's not just any other sci-fi ship. And then, so from 2017 when I published the first Arsenal book until 2000 and last year, I did exclusively superheroes. And I love superheroes. They're amazing. My superhero books sell pretty good. So at one point I was the #1 superhero author in the world, which was cool. Which is not saying much, though. It's a really small pool, and there's a lot.
Still, you take the clap, and you're just thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kalene. Thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of really talented authors in the superhero genre, so it's there's some competition. CC Keke, you guys have had him on before, Charles. He does a great superhero series. So called Pantheon Saga. There we go. And so so it's a lot of fun. but superheroes was not what I wanted to dream. I mean, as much as I love superheroes and love comic books and everything, my heart has always been with military sci-fi. I joined the Army as a kid because of books like Starship Troopers and Ender's Game. And that's what I always wanted to write. There was a great naval series when I was a kid called The Mote in God's Eye by Larry Niven and Jerry Pernelli that was just hugely amazing, impactful to me as a kid. And then, of course, everybody knows David Weber's Honor series. And then when I went to go and find other books like that were military sci-fi in the naval tradition, all I could find were things like that had as about as much in common with the military as the Rebel Alliance and Star Wars did, and one things about military sci-fi is they tend to be, well, not hard science fiction. They tend to be more grounded in reality than, say, Star Wars or other Star Trek, even Star Trek or things like that. Because Star Trek, you got Q, and so I wanted a series that didn't have aliens in it, that took the military serious, that the life in the military was accurate and meticulously created, and for people who like technology and science to really get into it, but also the wonder of space travel and all that. And I could never find it. And finally I was just like, I'm just writing it.
That's the way you do it. It's like, I want to read this thing, so I'm just going to write it.
Yeah. And so I had a great idea for military sci-fi. I knew in case anybody's ever wondering, all ideas are great ideas. Just FYI, there's no such, great ideas are not what make great stories. Great storytelling is what makes great stories. Any idea can be a great story. Just depends on the writer. But I had a great idea. And I had no idea how to sell military sci-fi. See, superheroes is kind of easy to sell because it is such a small niche. There are people looking for it. You have superheroes on the cover. It says superheroes in the title like mine do. It's going to sell. People, that's, your audience. You know exactly who's going to buy it. And so you build it around who's going to buy it. And people who are going to buy it are people who like comic books from the 1980s and 90s, people who like superhero movies and read books and know that superhero fiction exists, which is a really small number of people, about 10,000, I think, total. So since I had no idea how to do military sci-fi, I needed to find someone who did. And I met these guys in 2018, the same year I met you two at 20 Books in 2018. I went to go meet Chris Fox at the Bellagio and hopefully play D&D with him. But instead, I ended up meeting Rhett C. Bruno and Steve Vallier and Jonathan Yanez in the lobby of the Bellagio and playing D&D with them until like 1 o'clock in the morning. That was a great experience. Those three guys are so cool. And it turns out Steve's a big fan of superheroes too. In fact, he'd done this big superhero anthology where he invited all the best superhero authors to be a part of his anthology. All the best superhero authors, Steve.
So you were invited,
Except
of course.
yes.
No,
of
not at all.
course.
Never heard of me.
What? What? Was this before your rise to fame to the #1 superhero author in the world?
No. This was about at the height of it. This is when I was doing really well. And
you were too big. He was just like, no, I can't touch him yet.
He's like, no, I'm sure I have your email somewhere. And anyway, so that was a great night, and that was before they started Athon. But when I had my military sci-fi idea, they were killing it with military sci-fi. And so I went to Steve and I said, hey man, I've got this idea for this book, and it's sort of like my idea of military sci-fi, and it's got this and this, and it's about a captain who has been disgraced, and he's he's been assigned to a ship that's kind of a throwaway ship. What do you think? And he gave me some pointers and suggestions on things to change and do better or do differently that he thought would work better. And I seriously considered all of them and accepted most of them. And so that was 2000. And in 2019, when we went to 20 Books, I met them in the bar at what was that place we used to go in 20 Books?
Was it the Fridays? Because everyone was going Fridays.
Yeah, it was TGI Fridays, but what was the name of the Samstown?
The little area.
Yeah, because they were busy just doing shots the whole time, just knocking back shots. And so, of course, they said yes when I pitched my idea to Rhett. And Steve was all on board right from the beginning. I pitched him on Messenger, and he's like, yeah, but you got to convince Rhett. And apparently Rhett doesn't like military sci-fi, if I recall correctly, him saying that. So that's why I had to convince him. He loved the idea. I told him, hey, man, I'll have this book for you in 6 months. what year is it?
2022.
2.5? No, 921. So 2021. Almost 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
I've written 3 books. Thank you, 2020. And but they are 3 of the best books I have ever written. And I remember finishing the first book way late, like in the middle of I think I finished the first book in May of 2020, and then I finished the second book in 2021, and then I went back, and then I finished the third book about June of 2021. And then while writing the third book, I had learned some really just like key things about writing, and so I went back and rewrote the first bok. And when I rewrote the first book, I say rewrote, I
Added some things, tweaked
some things. Just out of curiosity, someone's saying there's a lot of buffering. Is our internet okay?
So
As you guys know?
I don't know. It could be either our end. It could be too much traffic going on the YouTube side right now. It could be their internet. I don't know. How's everyone else's feed going?
Yeah, let us know.
I'm gonna be bummed if no one can watch my epic.
For us, it's looking pretty good. Now, you waited a while to publish that first book, so you've been working on, and you got done the other 2. And then again, for authors who are like, "Oh, I just got done my first book and I'm ready to hit publish." Why would you wait? Why would you hold back and wait 2 more
because
books?
my publisher told me that they wouldn't publish me unless I had 3 books.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and that's key because you want to make sure, especially on the publisher side, that they get 3 books.
Yeah.
And then you have more versatility in how you publish, and you also don't have that doom fairy hanging over you. Where's the second book? Where is it? Your readers are waiting. It's already done. That's
and
good.
Publishing books a month apart is the ideal. That is the optimum time for hitting the algorithm. I know a lot of really successful authors, and they say the same thing. If you can publish a book 4 to 6 weeks apart, you will hit the algorithm and you will be successful. Publishing books 4 to 6 weeks apart is really, really hard. When I did Arsenal, I did a book every 3 months, and it damn near killed me. So
trying to get those out while writing,
and it worked out though. And it worked out though, because by the time I finished the third book, I had become such a better writer. I went back and edited and revised book 1 and 2. And when I was done revising book 1, I messaged Rhett and I said, "This is the best book I have ever written." And he's like, "Every author says that." I'm like, okay. And now I have 200 some odd reviews, and like 80% of them are 5 stars. So I feel like I was right in saying that it was the best book I'd ever written. And plus, also having all 3 done before the first one was published allowed me to make a bunch of changes and fix continuity and keep things flowing in the same direction in a way that I would not have been able to do if I'd just written them one at a time and got them out the door.
Right. If you get that fresh idea later, you might have to let it go or try to retcon it in, and that can look kind of fake to the readers.
Yeah.
You as a Marvel fan might be used to seeing that occasionally.
Yeah. Well, don't get me started.
And
R.I.P. Peter Parker.
One of the things that I keep thinking about as you're talking, kind of on our topic today, you were very into the superhero. That's where your initial writing was kind of going with your name. You're getting started. One of the benefits, or at least things to look out for when going to a new genre, find people who already know things about it. Take from their expertise. Like you're talking to the Athon guys, Rhett and Steve, and Steve's like, "Hey, XYZ." You're just like, "Okay, I'm really going to consider XYZ because this is not something I've ever written in." But you also have experience in that world, so you could put a lot of that flavor of personal experience, into your characters, which is
I travel in spaceships all the time.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
being in the army, like you have some of like I don't know what it's like to be a mountain ranger, but when I was a kid, I used to play out in the woods a lot, so I can at least get some of that textile of the feel of the earth and the sounds and kind of spookiness being out in the middle of nowhere, kind of a feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read a lot too, which always helps. One of the best advice anybody ever can give any author is just read a lot. Not just in your genre, but every genre. And I've read a lot since I was a little kid. I didn't have the best childhood, let's just say. And so I read to escape. and I read everything to escape. I spent more time at the library than I spent at school, and the so that time was apparently well spent. So I had an idea in my head about what military sci-fi should be or could be, and that's what I really wanted to do. So when I would get people to tell me like, oh, you should do this or you should do that, it's like, no, I have this theory. See, I have this theory that I'm a special snowflake. I know what readers really want. No, that's not. Because authors say that all the time. Well, my book's different. My book is not different. In fact, I have a bunch of reviews that say this is I've read this book before, or this is well trod territory. It is. It's just what I wanted and I couldn't find. But I do seem to have a knack for knowing what people want to read, and knowing who my audience is when I'm writing, and that's really, really important. Is knowing who your audience is. You just if there's one thing you can know in the marketing side of your business, is knowing who you're selling your book to, and that will help you be very successful. So with military sci-fi, I knew it was easy. It was fans of David Weber, fans of Star Trek, fans of the original Battlestar Galactica, fans of Run Silent, Run Deep. People about my age who watched a lot of the World War II submarine movies and wanted to have an experience where not only was the people in the ship important, but the ship itself was important. And I have a very detailed map of the Interceptor, which is the ship that's in the book, deck by deck. And it has character, has flavor. There's doors that don't work because it's so old. It's 45 years old at this point by the time the third book rolls around. I've served, when I served in the military, I had a truck that I drove once that was almost my dad's age.
See, that's what I'm saying. Use that experience and put it into something fresh. There you go. But you're segueing into what I was terribly segueing into, which was some of the hurdles that authors have going into, that they have to overcome going into a new genre. And one of those is, finding people who already experienced it. And basically your opinion on that is some of the hurdles you experienced and how you overcame them.
Well, I always try to have a plan when I do things. So I just didn't start writing and be like, I hope I make it someday. I wanted to start writing and sell 1 million copies of my first book. That didn't happen. But I did sell a lot of copies of my first book, and I learned from the mistakes of the second book, because I had a trilogy with Kindle Press, and the second one killed it. I learned not to write depressed. Or at least I learned to hide it better when I'm writing, because the second book got dark and sad, and everybody hated it. And so I try to learn from my failures, and I try to fail often, so that I learn, I learn how to work past those mistakes. You learn more from failing than you do from succeeding. I know why my books are popular, and I know why people like reading my books. And that's really important as an author, to be able to know what you're doing right, so that you can spot what you're doing wrong. I try to be very critical of myself and self-evaluate. I try to listen to everybody's advice when they give it to me, so that I am choosing to ignore their advice from a place of knowledge,
which is just as important,
or choosing to accept their advice from a place of knowledge. You know what I mean? Yeah. But my plan was, when I first started writing, I always wanted to write military sci-fi. I have wanted to write military sci-fi since I was a kid. I used to write Star Trek back before there was fan fiction. I used to write Star Trek fiction, but it wasn't about Kirk and Spock. It was my own people in my own ship, called the Atlantis, and they'd go off and explore things, and things would happen to them. And then I had my own version of, like, when I was in my 20s, I wrote my own version of Honor Harrington, Kingdom and All, and David Weber kind of has the capital in that idea, so couldn't do that. And so I just kept writing that stuff, and then I never thought I was going to be published, because I wasn't. Everybody told me I wasn't a very good writer my whole life. I mean, like, you don't have a grasp of spelling, or et cetera, et cetera. Turns out I was dyslexic and I had ADD, and that made it really hard for me to put on paper what I was trying to say. And once I got a handle on those two things, the writing really started happening. And to the point where my wife, who's a much better writer than I am, and one day you will all get to be blessed to read her epic fantasy that is having read it is amazing. Yeah, she was always like, yeah, you're okay, Jeff. Your writing's okay.
I love the honesty.
I mean, once I'm published, right? Once I was published, she's like, your writing is okay. It could be better. This and that. But she's nice about it. She's not like mean or anything. But then last year I was writing the 24-hour book challenge thing, and I wrote this scene, and she sent me a message, and she's like, "Oh, that's one of the best action scenes I've ever read."
Wow.
And I about died. I was just like, yes,
Accomplishment achieved.
You want to know why I write? I write to impress her. Also, I want to buy her a big diamond ring one day. So yeah, I'm always working forward. And so my plan was to write military sci-fi all along. So back in 2015, when I started writing, there's this guy, Chris Fox, who was doing a webcast about writing a book in 30 days, and I would follow him. Chris Fox is amazing, one of the nicest people I have ever met in my life. Happy to stop and talk to anybody online, so to speak, to help. He's really great, and he was very helpful to me. And then I met Jay Allen and a whole bunch of other military sci-fi authors, and I've spent the last 5 years, I don't want to say ingratiating myself, but networking. And you know me, I like to talk. I'll go to cons and I'll hey, how you doing? I'm Jeff. And I walked up to Shane Silver and shook his hand and talked to him for like an hour once, and but no problem doing that. And so when it came time to release this book, I had a lot of people, Colonel Brazy, I had a lot of people who I knew in the military sci-fi, and I gave them all a copy of the book, and I said, would you please read this and give me like a sales blurb? And if you would be so kind, send it out on your list. And I got some tremendous feedback from these people who all sell very well in the genre. And I put it on my little thing. My favorite, though, best of all, is Colonel Brazy, where he said, "Against all odds is the best tradition of David Weber and Jack Campbell, with exciting naval action and daring do that grabs your attention and never lets go. Above and beyond a great storyline, Haskell has captured not only realistic details of military life, but also the sense of what it means to put on the uniform."
Wow.
And I got that back from him, and I was just like, yep, my day is made. So that was always my plan all along, the whole time. And so, yeah, I got these great people like Jonathan Yanez and, what's the other guy? Daniel Aronson. Sorry, Daniel, my brain froze. Who helped me out. And then, of course, Rhett and Steve dropping, tens of thousands of dollars on their brilliant marketing from Athon to make it sell. And Steve told me that it was really interesting. Steve said that he can sell any book for about a week, but after a week, it's the author's work that keeps it going, And so I thought that was pretty interesting. But anyway, so I always had this plan to write military sci-fi, and so I connected with people who were successful the way I wanted to be successful, like with Plottr, for example, and who's in a wonderful audience, and he's been super helpful. And he's very successful in military sci-fi, and so that was kind of always my plan. I didn't haphazardly change into military sci-fi. This is something I've been working toward my whole life.
That's something that I wanted to bring up. Was I see it a lot where they're writing in whatever genre, be it romance and all of its subcategories, be it sci-fi or any of the other fantasies and everything in between. And a lot in newer authors, I should say. They're writing in this thing, it's not going the way they want, so they're like, ooh, X is doing super hot right now. So they jump into it. And what I'm more hearing from you is that this isn't something that you're just like, ooh, military sci-fi is doing really good, I'm going to give it a go. It's something that you already have invested a lot of time in. It's something that you already have an interest in, which in my opinion is going to show itself on the page through your characters, through your setting, through the world that you're building. All that love of it is going to come across. And I think that's a really important aspect of considering switching your genre is, do you even care about this genre? Is there, are there things in this genre that you really love? Or is it just, are you just chasing the next star? Yeah. Don't chase the next star. Love the star.
You can,
but at least have something you like about it.
I mean, there's lots of people who write whatever's successful at the time and are really good at it, and that's fine. But the thing is that I always told my kids growing up when they were growing up, and I'd make food for them, and they'd go, "Oh, your food's so good, Papa. Your food's so good," and I just follow directions. But I always told them there's a secret ingredient, and it's love, which sounds corny, I know, but I love
That's what I'm
them,
saying.
and so I put that extra work into that food. And that little flavor, little garnish at the side, stuff like that. And with military sci-fi, the whole reason I wrote superheroes first is I wanted to be better than I was when I wrote it. I wanted to be really good when I finally decided to write military sci-fi. I wanted to be good enough that if my heroes, like Robert Heinlein, assuming he's still alive, or Orson Scott Card, or all these wonderful writers that I read growing up, were to read it, they wouldn't be like, "Oh, what is this trash?" And I've read all those books, so I'm in no danger of reinventing the wheel. One thing that kind of frustrates me when I'm reading a book is when people use like the same sort of situations that have been present in a million other works of fiction, but you can tell they're presenting it as if nobody had ever thought of this before. And I'm just like, you need to read more. And I read a lot, so I really wanted I had the flavor I wanted, I had the tone I wanted. I am so done with Game of Thrones. I wanted hope and heroism, and I wanted the ship to be important, that kind of thing. And then, so I think I nailed it.
What's the difference between having those tropes that you love and the readers love and are looking for, and not repeating the same old formula?
Understanding why tropes are what they are and why people like them, beyond just the word trope and the name of the trope. If all you know is the name of the trope, then you don't know what the trope is. So there's a trope, the old embittered captain, right? That's a trope. And why do people like that? Well, they don't like it because he's old, and they don't like it because he's embittered, and they don't like it because he's a captain. They like him because he's the underdog. And so if you know that the captain needs to be an underdog, then it doesn't matter who they are or how old they are. The trope is, the trope because TV trope says so. And because somebody out there decided that was a trope, and so everybody writes it now. And writing that comes with absolutely no knowledge of why people like that. And once you know why people like that, then you just apply that to whatever situation you want. So if you know people like underdogs, then the captain doesn't have to be old. He can be young. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to be embittered. He could have made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Or he could have done everything right and still gotten and still gotten the short end of the stick, like happens so often in the military. So, understanding why tropes are the way they are and the history behind them, beyond just what TV trope says, is only something you can really do if you read a lot. And once you know those things, then you can do whatever you want with them. It's really unfortunate that TV tropes has distilled really nuanced ideas down to one sentence, and then everybody just does that one sentence, and it is derivative. I don't like tropes, just FYI. I hate them. I hate the word. I hate that website.
But it's still good. Like, you're still giving it reason. They still have a purpose. And just think a little bit beyond, what the average single sentence definition is.
Yeah, understanding the history of your genre is really important as well, because you need to know what's come before you if you want to build upon it. And I feel like people go to the TV tropes page for, what are the tropes for military sci-fi? Oh, here they are, okay. And then they just write those, and you end up with something that's extremely derivative and maybe well written, because the two, well written and original, have nothing to do with each other. Anyways, I feel like you'd be better served actually reading the books that those tropes are based on than looking at those tropes.
I'm asking yourself, why do you love it? What do you love about it? What resonates with you? What's connecting with you? Because it was that love that drove you to write the series in the first place, and it's really coming across. I like that your book, I think it takes some tropes, takes some things that people look for and love in the military science fiction and kind of turns them on their head. Kalene, could we hear the blurb for book 1? And
this is such a joy.
What this book is all about?
Since you so nicely asked, Lauren,
read all the way to the sales blurb, okay? The you're in the Navy now. I want to hear that part too when you read it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Let's see how I do. Today's spotlight is on Against All Odds, a military sci-fi series, Grimm's War, Book 1, by Jeffrey H. Haskell. The wrong crew, the wrong ship, the right captain. Idealistic Navy Lieutenant Jacob Grimm just wanted to honor his mother's sacrifice in the last Great War. When he's forced to return fire and destroy a squadron of ships to save his own, he thinks he's the hero, until they discover the ships are full of children. Disgraced and denied promotion, Jacob's career is over. That is until the head of ONI needs a disposable officer to command a battered destroyer on the rim. There's just one problem. Interceptor hasn't had a CO in months, and the ship is a mess. Worse, the system he's assigned to is corrupt and on the verge of all-out civil war with the Alliance. However, no one told Jacob he was disposable. Pirates, smugglers, and caliphate spies complicate the situation, and one captain with an old ship can't enforce the law, let alone stop anyone. The single greatest discovery of all time is about to change intergalactic politics forever. If Jacob doesn't find a way to succeed, then it won't just be the end of the Alliance. It will be the end of freedom for humanity. From USA Today best-selling author Jeffrey H. Haskell comes a military science fiction epic in the tradition of Honor Harrington and Star Trek. If you love heroes and starships, you will love to stand with Commander Jacob T. Grimm against all odds. You're in the Navy now. Of Doom!
You got to be an audio. You got to start narrating audiobooks, Kalene. You're so good.
Oh, thank you. I had started to, and then lots of things
Life
blew
happened?
up in my life, and yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll revisit, but maybe the stars will align for me. However many years down the line.
But you did an excellent job. Yeah, and that blurb really encompasses the entire thing. You got all the, the stakes are there. Both personal, professional, and galactic. I call this epic military sci-fi because the things that the ship does has an impact on the galaxy as a whole. But it's also very unrealistic for a small destroyer to have any kind of impact on the war or anything like that. So it's modeled off of a lot of the secret missions that ships went on during World War I and World War II that had huge impact, but nobody heard of. And so it's this kind of a running thing throughout the series is that Jacob and his crew in the ship, they do these great heroic things and they save thousands of lives, but nobody's heard of it. So all they remember is that, oh yeah, he's the guy who opened fire on a bunch of ships full of children,
full of kids. Like honestly, that's so heart-wrenching.
It is. Everything in my books though is based on stuff that's happened in real life, pretty much. It's kind of hard to get better than. It's kind of hard to have an imagination that's better than the stuff that really happens. I mean, just look around.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you for emphasizing my earlier point, Jeffrey.
Unfortunately, there are groups of ideological freedom fighters who will fire on military targets using children as human shields, and then when they get fired back on, they'll take video cameras and they'll go through and they go, look, they killed all these children. It's a pretty common tactic in certain parts of the world, and so that's what that was about. Is that they were making the Alliance look bad, basically propaganda wise. And
so
yeah,
you can't see me, but I'm frowning a lot.
You look like you're smiling to me.
Well,
and so
ignore the picture.
Yeah, and there's lots of complicated stuff. If you're a fan of history, you might recognize a few things. But for the most part, it's not in any kind of order that you would. It's not like I just took a whole section of history and just like I'm just going to write this, but in space. I just love history, and lots of cool things happen. The third book, the inspiration for the One Decisive Victory. The third book was the Great Raid that happened in World War II, which is where Army Rangers paradropped onto the Philippine Islands during a hurricane to rescue POWs from the Japanese who were going to execute all of them if they had to surrender, which was really awesome. That is not what the third book is. That just was my inspiration for book 3. And then my inspiration for book 2 was the East Indian Trade Company and the wars they fought as a civilian corporation against the British Crown and stuff. So, I kind of look at history for my inspiration and say, okay, what interesting thing happened in history, and how could I adapt that to space, kind of thing. And it ends up being pretty cool.
Yeah, but you put it in space, you make it bigger. The technology can be kind of anything you want. You're bringing different races and.
Yeah, it's 1,000 years in the future, so I've got this mix of old and new technology, and I try to keep the history vague, so that I can say, well, there was a period where there was like a dark ages, but in space, so technology didn't advance very far, or if it went backwards or whatever. Because when I was a kid, I could imagine really advanced stuff, and now all that's happened. So my imagination is like a really fast computer. We already have those.
But that's really good though, because some genres there's not really a whole lot of real world situations that you can draw on, but definitely going into any genre, being able to take some of that real world stuff and morph it into this new world that you're creating will definitely lend itself to that realism, to for the reader to really be able to realistically sink into the story. That was one of the things which I really need to start writing again. When I was writing, that was important to me, was even though this is totally made up and not believable, it needs to be believable in the frame of the story, that you could just step into it and it will exist. So
I have this amazing editor, not Kalene, but she is amazing, Scott, and he really helped me learn the importance of verisimilitude and how honesty and storytelling in every aspect that you can make it is really important. Because if you're honest in all the little things, when you have to go unbelievable in the big things, your readers will follow you through with it.
Exactly.
And so 90% of everything in the book science-wise works, 10% of it is made up.
Which is important. All right. Everyone out there, when you hear hard sci-fi, this is why it's important.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the TradPub definition of hard sci-fi, but I definitely have the indie definition of hard sci-fi. There's nothing in the book that isn't theoretically possible.
That's what I'm saying. That's all it means. It's like,
and I consulted with several scientists on the issue, so I mean, I know I'm right about light speed and mass and space travel, because I consulted with scientists from NASA who told me I was right. Exactly. So the person who I had this argument with, who's probably listening.
So do your research, get your expert to kind of look over certain key passages.
Your research, yeah, that's really important. Well, no, I don't want anybody looking at my words.
What?
I just tell them, this is what I'm going to do in the book.
Okay.
This is my understanding of how the science works. Am I correct? But no, you give people words to look at, and they have this crazy idea that
they can change them.
They could change those words, and they could use better words. And I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah, no, you just have to open up a line of dialogue.
There are many like that, but this one is mine.
Yeah, you're just like, hey, I have this really cool idea that I want to make happen. Does this make sense scientifically? Like, especially if you don't know what the science is you're supposed to be going after.
Yeah.
Like for me, I know I've mentioned it before, but it was how bodies would decompose in zero gravity. Like, do they become skeletal? Do they just get shrink wrapped? What's happening? How does that go? And I talked to why is his name escaping me? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Patterson. Talked to Bill Patterson about it. And we just got to talking on the science behind, biological things decomposing in space. And I got so many cool ideas. So yeah, you don't have to be like, here's chapter 1. What do you think? Open the actual dialogue of the thing. And you will get so much out of it that you can put into your writing, and it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things I came up with was this thing called the Richmond field. And the Richmond field is a 2-state quantum field that separates particles and allows dense molecules through while keeping light molecules like gas in. So you could have a force field that held in the atmosphere of the ship. But other ships could pass through and go outside into space. And the person who helped me come up with that was Lisa Richmond, LL Richmond. So therefore, it is
Nice.
called the Richmond field. And so I'm trying to make that a thing. So if you're a
Aw.
sci-fi writer and you want a force field in your on your ship that allows you to go through but keeps the atmosphere in, use the Richmond field. I want to make that a thing.
I might have to do that. Wait, I'm going to write it down. Maybe I can put it into Marines Luck and Ura, where it's still a thing. We're still writing it. There's just no ETA, but
Yeah, I have a lot of books like that.
maybe that needs to be a thing. I'll talk to Bill.
And Rick Partlow, there were no fan fiction websites when I was a kid because there was no web. All right. So where I was in Alaska, I had no idea that other people wrote fan fiction about Star Trek because the only books I ever saw were actual published books. So there, Mr. Partlow. Always got to correct me.
Yeah. So your protagonist, he is that example of that underdog, but
yes, absolutely, yeah.
He's a little different from most underdogs I've read before. In that, I thought you made a really bold choice of having your main character kill a ship full of kids accidentally, but that's in the blurb. Must be really early on in the story. That's the bold choice.
That's the genesis of the story. That's the hook. I went back and forth about putting that in the blurb, but I felt like if I didn't put it in the blurb, then I was missing out on an opportunity to grab people's attention because they grabbed everybody's attention.
Yeah.
And the thing is like,
I was gonna say, it also eliminates people be like, oh, I hate this because of this. It's like, well, it's in the blurb, so you knew what you were getting into.
You didn't have any, yeah. And I wrote that blurb using every time I'm on a podcast, my brain freezes.
Don't worry, it's my number one failing. My brain dies constantly.
I'll get back to whose book I used to write that blurb, but yeah. So going back to that whole thing about this happens in the military all the time. You return fire because you're taking fire, and bullets don't necessarily go where you want them to go. Brian Cohen's Sizzling Synopsis. That's what I wrote. That's where I got that's how I wrote the blurb, was by following How to Write a Sizzling Synopsis by Brian Cohen, who was amazing. And so, yeah, Jacob has to deal with that. And I got a review where someone's like, oh, you'd think this would be the biggest part of the story. Why isn't he investigating ships full of children or whatever? And I'm like, are you under the impression that you get to do what you want to do in the military?
Yeah.
If there's an investigation, it's somebody else doing it. It ain't him. I mean, this is not a movie or TV show where, I'm going to operate on my wife, No, it's just, you're in the military, you go where you're told to go. You do what you're told to do. Yeah, Rebecca did not like.
She said, honestly, the only people who put off are people like me who aren't his audience. And I hated it. I think that's why he decided to keep it.
I felt like
laughing.
I felt like she's the best. I felt like she challenges me on so many ways. So I always love it when she comes to me and she's like, I think you should do this or do that, because it really makes me think about why I'm making the decision I'm making. And it really made me think about that. Like, I felt like it was important to keep it in there because it was the attention getter,
Yeah.
And it's not a spoiler. It happens in the first chapter. By the end of the first chapter, you find this out. So it's no spoilers, But it is something he has to deal with. There's emotional ramifications. I had a veteran who told me that he loved that my books dealt with the ramifications of killing people on your psychology, on your brain, and how you as a soldier, or sailor, or spacer, a Marine, have to live with what you've done. And you can do everything right, and people still die. Sometimes it just doesn't matter if you're going left, right, or forward. There are no right decisions. And in this case, Jacob was defending his ships. He did everything right, and people died. It's his fault. He pulled the trigger. It's not his responsibility he's not responsible for their deaths, though.
Right.
But it is his fault. And so he deals with that throughout the first book. And in some extent, second and third book. It comes up again in the second book because somebody else does something very similar, and he has to help them through that situation. This is not a Star Wars shoot 'em from the hip action adventure where people just like, the Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger mowing down people without a thought. There's some of that, but very little, because there's Marines, and Marines shoot people. That's what they do, and they're very good at it. And so, but it's not a story told from the Marines' perspective. It's a story told from this, mostly from the perspective of the crew of the ship. And so I remember reading a book about fighter pilots in the 80s, and they would talk about how the one thing they weren't prepared for was dealing with the realization that the plane they just shot down had a human being in it, and how difficult that was. And so there's a little bit of that in there, for sure. I mean, it's as honest a book about military people as I could write, and I really wanted people who are veterans to read it and go, oh my gosh, this is what it was like to serve. This is what it was like to, deal with making a decision that ended badly. Because while I never had to kill anybody while I was in the military, there were times where I made decisions that were the best to my knowledge the right decision, and everything still went wrong, and I had to bear the brunt of that responsibility. So a lot of it's based on my own dealing with that as a commo guy in the Army. So So the book is as honest as I can make it, and that was really important to me. David Weber said something at 20 Books last year, which was probably the best 20 Books I've ever been to, mostly because he was there and Larry Correia was there. And Larry Correia you guys should have him on the show sometime. He's so great. Weber said in a panel, he said that as writers of military fiction, we have a responsibility to show the good and bad aspects of war, the brutality of it, the joy, the joy of survival, and the death of it. And so I tried really hard to not make it this sort of, oh hey, 100 people died, no big deal. Oh, I just killed 50 people, or I just mowed down a crowd full of people. I didn't want any of that. I wanted it to be real, as real as I could make it, anyways.
There are repercussions, and your characters are acknowledging that and going through it. And
I made some other bold choices that aren't in the blurb. There is religion in this book. I know, science fiction with religion. It's some sort of
bold choice
must be some sort of mistake. But Jacob is Christian, and he occasionally utters a prayer. When I was in the Army, there were no atheists in a foxhole, and I don't know if that's still true today, but I'm pretty sure when people are being shot at, they're not going, "Oh, there's nothing out there for me to pray to." Yeah, no, they're saying, "Oh God." So yeah, there's a little bit of religion, not a lot, tiny little bit. You can skip it if you want, but every once in a while, he'll say a prayer. And believe it or not, prayer is scientific. There are multiple studies that show praying before a decision, whether you are religious or not, will help you make a better decision. And also, there's there's a lot of evil people doing evil things that you will recognize that are evil people today doing evil things now, and this is 1,000 years in the future. And guess what? Those evil people were doing those evil things 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years before that, and 1,000 years before that. The more things change, the more they stay the same. There's nothing new under the sun here. And so there are no aliens. So it's really just like a hard military sci-fi, where it's a heavy focus on knowing what it's like to be military. A smattering of spying in it. One of the characters is a spy. She's awesome. She's actually based on a certain dark-haired beauty that I know who was watching this podcast. And so yeah, the spy was a lot of fun to write. And she gives me a little break from writing the military people. She gets to be, break the rules and that kind of thing. That's always cool. Yeah. Any questions from the audience?
We did have a couple beforehand. Do you want to hit those? You want me to hit those?
Yes, we had a question from filling up time. Well, I had a question.
Sure.
So with your protagonist killing off the kids so quickly, he for me is taking on like one of my worst nightmares. Like a lot of people are scared of cancer or getting in a car accident, that kind of thing. But being responsible for guilt, that, and then having to live with yourself, that's often the end of a bad character story, where he comes to realize what he's done and now he is his own nightmare. Your character, he's like starting off from there. And then, so that was one thing where I noticed that like the end of the story is at the beginning of the story. But also you have like the last great war is in book 1 of a series, as opposed to the series is leading up to the last great war.
Okay, I can see why that would be a little confusing. he's actually the blurber's actually talking about the last Great War.
That they hope.
There was a war 20 years before they called the Great War.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, okay, I can see why that's a little confusing. Maybe I should revisit that. But yeah, no, the book series is leading up toward a war, another one. One of my ideas for this was kind of like what would happen if the Allies lost World War One. What would World War II then look like? Because it would still happen, and so that's kind of what I'm kind of doing. So yeah, it is leading up to a war. So there was a war before, 20 years before, that has a huge impact on how the story is now. I don't want to give that one away because there are a lot of
spoilers.
Yeah, and then but it is leading up to a war that will start in one of those books. If you want to know which one, you have to read it to find out.
Dun dun dun.
But as for Jacob, that being the end of his arc, no, he goes from being this idealistic young Navy lieutenant who's like, yeah, the Navy's great, hoorah, 3 cheers, I love the Navy, and then the Navy turns on him because he made them look bad. And so, yeah, he's dealing with the guilt of having killed those kids. But
by doing his job.
By doing his job. Yeah, he's also dealing with the ramifications of having done his job exactly as he was supposed to have done his job. And then having the Navy says he did it wrong. And so...
People in the audience are being spicy.
I should not have chat on when I'm doing these interviews. And so yeah, when you read the book, you'll see how he deals with that and how he kind of redeems himself through the course of the book. And it's really quite awesome, I think. Some of it was planned, some of it was spontaneous, but mostly it knowing who the character was and the kind of decisions he would make really helped me make sure before I started writing, helped me know how to resolve it. And then in the next book, he's telling someone who made the same mistake, not the same mistake. They had to do the same thing basically. And he said, listen, you've got to find a way to deal with it. Or the next time, maybe nobody gets saved. Because in the end, he saved lives. He saved more lives than he took. And he saved the lives of his people by taking the lives of other people. And really, when it comes down to it, there's us and them. And who's more important, us or them? And if them are killing us, then you got to make a decision. So yeah, if you sounds like this would be a really, really personal thing to you, Lauren. So I highly recommend you read the book. I think you'll really enjoy how he resolves the issue at the end of the book. So I don't know if military sci-fi is your thing, but I think you'll enjoy the book if you read it.
She just edits and reads a little bit, just a tiny bit. Anyway,
Peter Berglot did the narration, and he is absolutely friggin' amazing. So if you don't have time to read the book, you can listen to the book,
which I also love
through Athon. Yeah, and Peter is just amazing. He did Scott Moon's series too, and he's just such a good narrator. Whenever I'm writing now, I hear his voice in my head.
That's good. That helps keep the words flowing.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a bunch of questions now. Scott Walker asks, which fan base is more likely to nitpick or criticize, superhero fans or military sci-fi fans? Does this affect the process as you write?
Superhero fans are more likely to nitpick things about superheroes. Like, for instance, one of my first reviews on Arsenal was, this is just like Iron Man. And I'm like, she's nothing like Iron Man. She's a biracial Latino Hispanic woman in a wheelchair in a suit of armor that she built trying to find out who killed her parent or who took her parents. She's not an alcoholic. She's not a womanizer. She's 18-year-old girl. How is this at all like Iron Man other than they both wear armor? So superheroes readers are more likely to nitpick, especially about the science. Don't ask me why. Superheroes, they nitpick about the science. But the military sci-fi fans, from what I've seen so far, and it's funny is I've gotten more reviews on Against All Odds in a week than I did on any of my other books in the last 5 years, total. But they seem to be like, they either love it or they absolutely hate it. And the things that they hated about really make me laugh out loud. Like, someone was mad that the main antagonist in the first book is Russian. And he felt like that represented all Russians. It did not represent all Russians because it wasn't Russia. It was a system called Zuckerbar that's 6,000 light years away from Earth that was, colonized by Russians, people of Russian descent, but they're not Russia. So I'm like, Russians aren't the bad guy. It's a Russian is. And then someone didn't like that. He called Jacob's obsession with prayer. He's praised once in the book. Why would we have these Bronze Age myths 500 years in the future? And something about sci-fi, man. Some people don't like religion in sci-fi, and to me, religion is part of life. It's been around for thousands of years. It'll be around for thousands of years more. I would no sooner not have religion in my books than I wouldn't have romance or humor or anything else, because it's all part of the human condition. And as authors, what more can we do than write authentic, true humans in order to tell a story?
It's a good answer. Good answer. Good answer. Clapping. Watching too many of those shows. Kit in the live chat is asking, how do you decide on how advanced the weapons get?
Kid, I could do an entire podcast on this. So military tend to have doctrines. For instance, in World War II, the Japanese Navy, they had a doctrine of complicated missions, complicated plans. They would have these overly complicated plans, and they were overly complicated because they'd have multiple objectives, multiple disparate objectives. So their plans couldn't help but be complicated. So militaries have doctrines, right? But they also have a weapon systems doctrine. So the Navy has slowly over the years switched from projectile weapons to missiles. And just like aircraft used to have nothing but guns, now the guns are very limited and it's missiles, right? So the U.S. military weapons doctrine is missiles and bombs. Right, but you might have somebody else whose doctrine is guns. Like the Russians love guns, so their planes tend to have more ammo on them than ours do. And they also have laser-guided weapons on their Su-27s. So laser-guided machine guns on their Su-27s. So I wanted to come up with something that was just as realistic. There's 4 or 5 major powers in the universe, in the galaxy, and so I gave each one of them their own doctrine. The consortium, which is an ally of the alliance, they have a doctrine of advanced technology advancement at the cost of all things. So they use really advanced technology that is untried and not always successful. The Caliphate have a doctrine of close-in strength. So they will come in and they have weapons that are not very good at long range, but brutal at short range. So with the Alliance, they have a doctrine where their doctrine is they needed stuff that was easy to maintain. And so virtually everything is based on coil gun technology, because the coils never wear out, because the weapons don't actually touch the coils. Ground doesn't actually touch the coils. It goes down the coil. Unlike a rail gun where it slides on the rail, a coil gun suspends an object in a field and sends it downrange. So vast majority of the weapons are based on that coil gun technology. So they have turrets that fire 20 millimeter coil guns, and then they have a main gun that fires a huge Hurricane round, but only in the direction the ship is pointed, because it has a 29 meter long barrel, and it's called the Long 9. And so for their personal weapons, so that's technology that can't be it's fairly easy to maintain, fairly easy to load, and durable. But for the personal weapons, that advanced at a higher rate, because you can replace personal weapons a lot easier than you can replace, say, the turret on a destroyer or battleship. So for the personal weapons, they have a weapon that allows them to have lethality in multiple situations, but without damaging the interior of a ship, because for the most part, the Marines are stationed on ships, and if you're firing a weapon on a ship, you don't want to be puncture the hull or
that'd be
out in
bad.
space.
Just a little
blow up
bit.
the computers. And so they have these modular weapons called MP-17s, and they have a reservoir of nanites in them, and so they come configured as pistols, but you can change them to rifles, carbines, submachine guns, shotguns, just with the touch of a button. And they shoot a variety of ammunition from these highly propelled silicate slivers that will shred you to stun rounds, 10 millimeter stun rounds that will knock you unconscious, that kind of thing. So I put a lot of thought into the weapons.
Yeah, no, but one thing I'm hearing, which is something that I don't know if a lot of people really take into consideration, is all of these different peoples, all these different militaries, you know, you're giving them versatility in their restriction of what they actually have available to them. So that's going to change a lot of how the tactics
fight.
of the
Yeah.
different militaries, because they're using different weapons. No, not everybody has all of the, you know, the laser beams and the this and the that, and it's just all pew-pews. It's, you know,
A variety of
you
weapons.
have
Yeah.
that versatility in it.
The consortium
Definitely,
believes in heavily armored ships, but they have fewer of them. And the Caliphate believes in lightly armed, heavily armed ships, and a lot of them. You know what I mean? And the Alliance, because they're disparate, they have a lot of different planets with a lot of different resources. They tend to go with what they can refit and build the cheapest, but also the best. So, yeah. And then you have the Iron Empire, which I didn't even mention before, and they strike a middle of the road bargain between armor and weapons, but also between technology and reliability. So their ships tend to be slightly more advanced, but also much more reliable, that kind of thing. So, and that way they're like characters, right? So when I'm writing them, I'm like, okay, so the Caliphate aren't gonna stand off from maximum range and fire at these ships. They're gonna cruise right up to close range and use their more superior weapons to finish it off. Whereas the Alliance will do standoff at a distance and shoot, and the Consortium will rely on their heavy armor to protect them while they shoot, that kind of thing. So yeah, it really allows me to make all the ships in all the battles have character beyond just, oh hey, here's a ship here and here's a ship here and here's a ship here, and they're shooting at each other. Whichever one holds the other one first wins, you know.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is it's not so much about how advanced you're making the technology in your sci-fis. If you can find that balance of, well, they did this for X, and well, they did that for Y, you will find, as Jeff has explained, you have a lot more, how do I say it? Interesting. It'll make things a lot more interesting by giving yourself those restrictions on the different bits as it's well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Lady Veracity asked, why don't you give your MC a really hot ship?
That's what we were talking about earlier.
The Interceptor is a hot ship. I mean, have you seen the shark on the front of it? Come on.
No, really.
Chomp, chomp, chomp. Well, part of it is the appeal of the old battered ship, right? And why do we have that appeal? Because it's an underdog, and we like underdogs. So I knew the audience would connect with that. Like, oh, this poor guy. Not only has he got the short end of the stick with the Navy, now they're going to give him this battered destroyer. When you first meet the Interceptor, she's open. She's got parts of her that are open to space. Like one of the turrets is literally open on the outside. There's plating over like a hole that's on the side. And, that's part of her character. She's got the briefing room door doesn't close. The captain's chair squeaks.
Yeah, I wanted to point this out earlier, but this is a more perfect. Jake Clifton Slater said a little bit earlier in the show, love the spaceship. Most writers, when they say the ship is old, it turns out to be a hidden monster. Jeff's ship can't get out of the dock. Great job.
It literally cannot. When he takes command, the engine has been removed.
Oh.
And the first part of the book is him trying to track down what happened to the engine. It literally cannot get out of the dock. And, gosh, I love Jim. Thank you, Jim. Again, underdog, understanding tropes, why they are the way they are, allows you to play with them in a way that you'll never be able to if you don't understand them. And so when you make everything the underdog, then everybody has felt like they were the underdog at one time or another. We are hardwired to root for the underdog.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Patricia Gillum, she asked, did your writing routine / pattern change after changing genres? Ooh,
not really. It changed more from having more children from genres. I wrote like the 3 books I wrote before these 3 books. I wrote in Chick-fil-A. And then 2020 happened and I couldn't leave the house anymore. So I had to learn how to write from home, which has been a fun process, but I think I finally figured it out. I wrote 3,000 words today before everybody got up this morning. And so, yeah, I've got that down. So not really, no, just having more kids changed it. I've got 5 kids now, so it makes it more interesting.
Remain
time to write.
flexible is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's important to have little rituals when you write so that you can get yourself into the zone, especially if you're not feeling like writing. And if you have those rituals, then you can apply them anywhere at any time to rituals.
Yeah.
To yourself, and you can start writing. So, like, I didn't used to be able to write at night. Now I can. I didn't used to be able to get up super early and write. Now I can. I didn't used to be able to write for half an hour a day. Now I can. So, just be flexible. And if you don't have kids and you haven't written 300,000 word novels a year, then something's wrong with you. Maybe you need kids to motivate you. I don't know.
So is it a matter of like just doing it every day?
Yes.
Finding
Just
what
Michael
feels
Jordan
good.
did not become the world's greatest basketball player by not playing basketball. I'm speaking to authors right now who have not found success or who are not full-time authors. If you want to be a successful author, you have to write every single day. Now, there's a caveat to that. Sometimes you just can't write every single day. So if you can't write every day, think about writing every day. And if for some reason you can't think about writing every day, read about writing every day. And if you can't read about it, read. Just read. But if you want to be a successful author, you have got to commit to being an author, and you have got to focus your whole entire being on it. And now, I'm lucky because I have a family who's very supportive. I understand that. Okay, I have family privilege. I am very privileged to have a wonderful wife who is encouraging me in my writer's journey, and not like being angry at me for not making money this month. But September, I promise, I'll make a lot. And so I know I understand I have that advantage, but I also have disadvantages. I have 5 children. I have to write when nothing else can be done. I have dyslexia. You know what I mean? Like, so we all have our challenges learning how to write. But if you want to be a writer, you have to write. And the more you write, the better you'll get. And every novel you release should be better than the last one. And so that's my challenge is to always be writing. I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah. No, I feel it.
It's inspirational. It needs to be cut, copied. Someone do it. Someone intern.
Make a poster.
Cut that out.
Make a YouTube short.
All right, Lady Veracity. She also asks, "How do you write so fast, and do you think that hurts your quality?" Oh, so that's a hard question, hardball question.
No, it's not really a hardball question. She sounds like a very smart lady, probably very beautiful too. But it does. It does. The honest answer is it does. Writing fast hurts your quality. There's just no question about it. And the reason why is there's no skill in the world where going slow does not give you a better product in the end. However, I also edit. So that's not something I used to do on my superhero novels. I used to just crank them out. Boom. Spell check them, send them off. Then I got this editor, and he helped me learn things. And Scott, he did so much for my career. I just cannot talk so much. I cannot say enough good things about Scott. And he helped me learn. I had a really hard time with grammar because of my dyslexia, and he helped me learn the purpose of grammar, which I had always thought was because of grammar, because that's what I was always told by the grammar Nazis. It's grammar, but no, it turns out the purpose of grammar is clarity. And once you understand that, things make a lot more sense. Is what you're saying clear? Like the last war thing. And it absolutely. I've had to slow down. I've slowed way down for these books. I used to write 5,000-6,000 words a day. I could do 2,000 words an hour, work 3 hours, be done. Now I work 3 hours, I get 1,400 words done, which is okay because every single one of them is really, really good. And I have so few errors anymore that it's absolutely worth slowing down for. When I was first starting out, pushing out a bunch of books really helped my career. I'm really thankful for that. I'm thankful for people like Chris Fox with their 5,000 words an hour, even though he himself admits that that's a clickbait title. Because I learned how to write better because of things like that. I learned a lot about outlining and about typing and about all this great stuff. But yeah, absolutely. The faster you go, the lower your quality is going to be, and the more you're going to have to edit. It's just human nature. That's just how it is. I know an author who writes 18,000 words a day, but it usually takes him 14 hours to do it. So he's not going fast. He's just spending all day doing it. Whereas,
still a lot. It's incredible.
Yeah. Whereas I write for 3 or maybe 4 hours a day and get 1,500 to 2,000 words done. But because of how I've evolved as a writer with my understanding of story and character and theme and all that good stuff, they're always really good words these days. So at least words I'm proud of, anyways.
So definitely with that one, it's okay to start writing fast, just to get the words out. But, as you're growing, as you're learning, figure out what words you don't have to write. And the more that you work at it, the more you can just be writing and not make those mistakes. And you're going to save yourself so much time in the long run, because you're not going to end up spending weeks or months editing something that didn't have to be written in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And and my other theory on writing is just to keep moving forward. Yep. Don't constantly be going back to other books you've written and try and rewrite them, make them better, or make them sell. Just write a new one. Move forward.
Yeah, you have to allow yourself to say it's done, it's good enough, and then use everything that you have learned, taught yourself, and figured out to write exactly as you're saying, the next book or the next series, or, as we've been talking about, discovering a new genre. And with that, right. I don't want to keep you horribly much longer. We are a little bit over, but Jeff, thank you so much for coming on, spending your time, and your new book, Against All Odds, thanks to, with the help from Athon Books, everyone who you've talked to, military-wise, NASA, coming in for this one story, it's been doing really well, and it's amazing seeing your journey. It's never too late to try something new, and it's never too late to make a bestseller. So
this is so true. I'm 49 this year, and I started writing in 2015. You do the math, so I'm writing seriously, anyways. So it's never too late to it's never too late to get started. 5 years is going to pass no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to be at the end of that 5 years? Do you want to have written a book, or do you want to have played a lot of League of Legends? Or both.
Exactly. And I know I was closing out the store, but Hyper Crystallized is coming in with a super last minute question, which I do really like. And you did kind of answer it earlier on. What do you do when you feel like a character or storyline isn't working? When you get far into the book, you had said, you had gotten to the third book and there were things that you discovered and you went back to the first book. So kind of touch a little bit more.
Most of the stuff in the third book I discovered were craft related, not necessarily story related. So it was like how to write things better, not necessarily like everything in the first book worked. It just wasn't written as good as it could have been written. But yeah, what she's saying is like, so you're halfway in a book and you're not feeling it. The story is lackluster, the characters are lackluster. What do you do? Well, you have to make a decision. Do you feel like you can salvage it by starting over, or do you feel like it's just the ideas played out and you're just not feeling it? I have started over books before from scratch. Book 2, I started 3 times and wrote 30,000 words in it each time before I got to the part and said, nope, it's not working. Start over. And what that does is, because you're starting over, you're getting rid of everything you used already, or only keeping the stuff that's the very best that you used. And moving on, and eventually you will get to a place where you'll get halfway through the book and you'll be like, yep, this is totally working, this is great, I feel the magic. Boom. So so decide if the story can be salvaged, and if it can't, start over from scratch, idea and everything.
It's just that simple and just that hard. Yes. Sometimes you've got to cut the darlings, and you have to be honest with yourself that it's not working and have the grit to figure out why it might not be working, and then fix it and write and read and do all the things.
Yeah, time is like money. Don't throw good time after bad time. If you wasted a lot of time getting a half story, don't feel like you have to sink a bunch more time into it because you already put a bunch of time into it. Cut it loose. Mm-hmm. Throw it out the airlock.
And with that, everybody, thank you for joining us on your writer's journey. Definitely check out Against All Odds. It sounds like, to me, a fun take on old, I know he hates it, tropes, ideas, concepts, with fresh, coming from him, ideas. And He had an idea that he wanted to read, couldn't find it, wrote it. And if that's you and you are looking to jump into a new genre, do it. There are more than one way to write. There's more than one way to try something new. And with that, as I ramble on with my rambliness, for Lauren Moore, I am Kalene Williams. Thank you for joining us on the Writer's Journey. Be sure to check us out next week, where we're going to talk about more next week, the week after next week. I keep forgetting we have a new showtimes. More reading, writing, and everything in between right here in Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey. Peace out, you guys.